Now, today we are going to discuss about an astonishing fact, that is print, culture and the modern world. So what is so astonishing about the print, culture and the modern world? See, today we find around us everywhere, we find printed matter everywhere around us. We see the advertisements, we look at the magazines, we look at the books, we read the newspapers, we look at the library collection, we always look at the calendars, circulars, notices, government orders. All these things are on printed official matters. So whatever we look, it is on the blue and black. So whatever we find the written information, that all is found there. So now we all forgot that what is a world before these all are present. Do we have a world which is present without a printed matter at? Yes, we have a world which has a printed matter not at all printed, which means like there was an existing period of time when there was no printing machine at all, when there was no writing at all, when there was no official record maintenance at all. Then how did the people survive during that period? How did the transformation happen from the non-printed world to the printed world? How did the time pass went on? How did the time went on? How did the process went on? So now we need to learn in this chapter how the printing developed. And as I told you before, astonishing fact is that generally we discover many things transforming from west to east, getting knowledge from the west to east. But for the first time, we here discuss that printing has been discussed in the eastern part of Asia, was being carried over to the west. Who were the first people to discover printing? How did the printing got transformed the knowledge from west towards, from the east to the west? Till now, from west to east is a common travel journey. But for the first time, we find like facts which where eastern people know this one before, far earlier than the west. Some of the travelers who came to study about the east discovered this one, carried this knowledge back to the west. From there it started spreading in the entire west. So that's how printing has got a special place in the history. So now we are going to learn how did the printing develop, or what is the history of printing, what was there prior to the history of printing, how did people get the idea of the knowledge of printing. These all the things can be answered after you go through this unit. As we were discussing to establish from where did actually the process of printing start. But before understanding this one, we need to understand the history of China. China, the first book was printed in China, later in Japan, from then it passed on to Korea. So China, Japan, Korea, all are the eastern countries of Asia. They are geographically located on the eastern corner of Asia. For the first time from east, the knowledge passed on to west. Yes, it got blended with the technology and returned back again. Maybe it is a good understanding, but the basic knowledge always started from the east in regarding to the printing. So in 594 AD, the first books which were printed in China, and later they were also printing on the rubber paper, which was a thick paper because China people have more amount of rubber crop available for them. So as per their requirements and as per the availability of the resources, they were easily able to produce more number of books or volumes of writing volumes. So why did I mention it as the writing volumes, not as a printed books? Because during that period the printing machine was different when it compared to our modern printing machine. So they used to make the wooden blocks which are being inked. After the wooden blocks are inked, then they were made to copy that one. So as the pages are very thin, they used to make the pages to fold and bind it on the other edge, that is accordion book. The accordion book is a book which has the compilation of all the written pages and tied or printed or bounded on the other side. Like how do we do this binding of the modern days? In that way it has been tied on one side, which allows to get a look of a book. That's how the printing started. And during those periods we have excellent calligraphists. The calligraphists are the people who have a stylish and a very beautiful handwriting. They used to copy exactly how does it look from one page to the other page. That's how the writing got transformed into various number of volumes, and then it got on to move on to the West. But in China, why is printing very famous in China? What is the necessity for China to print or to have the written records of all these things? In China, way back itself, in the 8th century itself, they had the habit of recruiting bureaucrats through written examinations. That is a basic fundamental necessity for what China people required the printing knowledge. So the printing material served for them to recruit huge bureaucratic system. So the bureaucratic system has been recruited through the civil services examination, which is in India also we have the civil services examination. What we have after we got independence, a Union Public Service Commission board was set up in order to recruit efficient and complement or the people, those who can look at the issues. So in the process of recruiting the able and the efficient administrative officers or the bureaucrats, even in India we have the civil services examinations, which are considered as the topmost examinations in India. So availing or attempting for civil services has also been considered as a credit or as a privilege opportunity for most of the Indians. But now as we are discussing about the Chinese recruitment policy, China people have followed this one way back before us, though it may not be so tough as we are following today. But the civil services examination was considered as a high quality examination during that period, because in China they need more number of bureaucrats in order to run their administration. So in this process they would always like to have a good consistent examination by having a printed paper for that. That's how the necessity for having a printed paper examination has generated in China due to this one. That is the reason why we have the printing more officially developed in China, though it has been done by calligraphists or on the wooden blocks or on the rubber sheets. Printing has been encouraged on a very large scale by the own imperialistic state, means the own government. That is the reason why printing has been focused more in China rather than in other parts of the world. So later on, after the imperialists started to use it for the state services or the civil services, the merchants started to use for their day-to-day business activities, and the reading habit has been generated to almost all the people, especially for the rich women who are staying at the houses, who are the wives of the higher officials, used to write, and these books were also been again published, and that's how the poetry, the prose, the narratives, the autobiographies, all these started to spread from one corner to the other corner. So now from the West, how did the people come to know about the East?